Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Gamers University podcast. My name is Michael Santiago, and today I have Jakejames Lugo with me joining me. What's going on, Jake James?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You mind if I call you JJ?
JJ's cool. Yeah. JJ's shorthand because I've been called all types of names in the book, even though it'll be funny too, because I'll give people my name in like an email or something, and somehow they'll go from Jake James to Jack James to Jacob James. I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Oh man, at least it's not like
hilarious.
Steve. Like, yeah, you mind if I call you Steve? Because
Oh
you know,
my
you look
God.
like a Steve.
The last thing I need to be is like names are referred to as a Minecraft character. Come on now.
Oh man. So why don't you tell the beautiful people out there what you do for a living?
I'm a content creator slash freelancer where I do a whole bunch of stuff, on YouTube, platforms like Twitch, obviously various different websites that are related to video games and entertainment in general. Because I do a lot of videos on my own YouTube channel is really where my bread and butter is as far as like my frequent every day or every week stuff. And then I write about video games in a variety of places, a lot. I've written in outlets for over the last almost nearly 12 years from places like
Wow.
IGN, Playboy, what is it, Switch Player Magazine, recently
Mm.
Red Bull Gaming, and all the way down to local blogs and local websites where every weekend now I write about retro games and fighting games and arcade games over at Flynn's Arcade and Moore's gaming website, which is down here in Margate, Florida. So I do a lot
Wow,
overall.
that's cool, man. So let's roll back the clock a little bit. So what got you into the content creating and freelancing and writing for
Well,
games?
as far as like making content, like just as content creation in general, because I've been gaming all my life. My first
Right.
video game was Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Genesis when I was
Hmm.
about 4 or 5 years old. And it was history from there. But as far as
Yeah.
like content creation, as far as like making videos and writing about stuff, a lot of that came from watching a lot of stuff that was on IGN, a lot of stuff that was on G4 back in the day, getting
Yeah.
inspired by that and seeing that you could be on a place like TV or television in general and be able to talk about some of your favorite stuff. In my case, was video games, or
Yeah.
in some people's case, it'd be anime or comics or whatever. What really sparked up everything, what especially for YouTube, was watching people like Darkside Phil and a few others that were actually just putting a camera in front of them and just talking about games. Now, some of them from back in the day aren't in the best of lights now these days. They kind of suck for
Yeah,
one
yeah,
reason or
yeah, for
another.
sure.
But that at least gave a lot of people, myself included, inspiration on where to go from there and how to actually change up your passion, your hobby into something else different.
Right, right. Okay, okay, that's awesome. So did you go to like school to become a writer? Like how did you
No,
get into that skill?
I went to school for game design and game art. That was my original thing.
Oh,
I've been to
wow.
two different places in school. I went to Mercy College over in New York, and
Yeah,
then I
yeah,
also
I
came
know
down
about that.
here in Florida. I went to MIU for computer animation specifically, and I quickly came to find out, especially in the transition from up north to down south, that I'm not really a game design person. I'm not really technical
Mm,
like that. I'm not
yeah.
really analytical in that sense, what you have to be in order to design video games, especially to program and stuff. I'm concerned where I appreciate the art form, of it, and actually the design of stuff, which is another can of worms. And some people, if you've done animation work, if you've done like actual drawing work, even, you know how
Hmm.
tough and ridiculous that could be
Yeah.
sometimes. But I was always appreciative of the critique of games. Like, actually, I played more video games than the average person. Even now, I play a ridiculous amount of games,
Hmm.
more so than most other people. Not to brag, but it's just a fact,
Right.
on the frequency that I engage with it. And I akin it to the same way that like Roger Ebert or Gene Siskel would watch film whenever they would talk about film on their constant show. That's why I say I always get inspired by them so much, because they watch like 5 or 6 films a week. And then every
Mhm.
single day was talking films. I'm the same way with video games. And that's how it kind of came up from there after watching like IGN, listening to podcasts beyond, watching X Play on G4, watching Judgment Day on D4,
Mhm.
a lot of different places like that just all kind of combined together into what eventually I ended up doing later.
Wow, that's incredible. So so what like sparked the initial like launch of like what you were gonna do, your YouTube channel and just getting that going? Like what started that?
Well, it was the same thing I mentioned before, just watching other people on YouTube, because YouTube, a lot of us been watching YouTube since like before 2010, I believe it was,
Yeah.
or YouTube's been around a hot minute. Well, I mean, now we're in like 2021 going to 2022. We look back, it's like, damn, that was a long time.
Yeah.
Like it's been a hot minute. But for me, it was really watching again people like Dark Side Phil, people like Angry Joe, people
Mhm.
like was it Channel Awesome, because Angry Joe was part of Channel Awesome at one
Yeah.
point, and others that were talking about games in different ways, and they all had their own separate flavors. And most of the time, it was really just people just putting a camera in front of them and just going and just
Right.
rolling with it. That's how you
Right.
got, you flexed your muscles and kind of learned the craft of being on camera and also public speaking. Because one of the things I used to do besides being on camera, eventually, doing stuff for YouTube, I used to go to a lot of conventions, especially down here in Florida, where I would
Mhm.
host panels, and I was doing a lot of public speaking with that, hosting panels. So that really kind of, again, all combined together to put me onto the path of actually making content for my own YouTube channel.
Wow, that's awesome. So what was it always like easy in the beginning, or did you find it like you were natural at it, or is this something that you needed to work on?
The act of doing it, or like the action, like getting up to actually make the videos,
Mhm.
that's always going to have its challenges and always has. But as
Mhm.
far as like putting myself in front of the camera and actually being able to talk, no, that's always been easy. Because again, I did a lot of panels and I've talked to a lot of people in public speaking. You could look at it in the same way as if you're getting on stage talking to a bunch of people, the same way
Right.
that you're talking to a camera, for a YouTube video, because you're going to speak to a lot more people that see that video on YouTube, especially over time. Like the
Yeah.
numbers, when you really start to think about it, are crazy. What really was tough and what was really was the challenge, and what was really something that is stressful for anybody even now these days, is
Mhm.
getting it to, exposed to people, actually getting your content, getting your videos in front of people, so that way they can judge whether they want to sub to you or not. That's
Right.
the tough thing that myself and many other people, I'm pretty sure you yourself, will probably experience if you haven't already, in great detail. And it's something that you never really get over. It's like a constant thing with the content creators, no matter what platform you're on, even not just YouTube, but like
Mhm.
Twitch, anywhere, even social media like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Now it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely hard to get like a spotlight or get noticed or stuff like that when you're doing content creation. Um, what has like worked for you? You've been doing this for some time now. What seems to be working for you?
A couple different things, which even then, the stuff that works hasn't really gotten me to the point where I want to be at, which is again farther down the line, it seems
Hmm.
like at times. But what's worked for me is one, being loud about what I do about stuff, sometimes to the point of being annoying. Like not annoying in the sense where it's like, oh, you're constantly spamming someone or you're just being obnoxious and
Hmm.
like conceited to people. I mean, actually being your own cheerleader. Like some people say it, but they can't really tell the difference between doing that and actually what really means to be annoying. Like I said, spamming and just being obnoxious to people. Being your own
Yeah.
cheerleader means, like, again, sharing your stuff on Twitter all the time or social media all the time, telling people about it, joining groups, taking advantage of like the little spots that people have for sharing other people's works. Because, as much as some people are like a little bit antsy and a little apprehensive to do that,
Hmm.
that is important to being a content creator in general. It doesn't matter what you do. You got to put your stuff in front of people and you got to represent your own brand, and your
Yeah.
own team, especially when nobody else is going to do it for you. Like there's been times where I feel like I got the greatest content in the world, or I've got greater content than what I've seen out there, and
Hmm.
nobody will watch it because nobody is paying attention. How are they going to pay attention? You got to tell them that you exist. You got to put your stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's got to be frustrating. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you like positive, knowing that how difficult it could be to get like those listeners and those watchers. What keeps you motivated?
It's a lot of different things, and it's different for each type of scenario or situation, because there's been times where it's been low, like low self-esteem, low energy,
Hmm.
almost downright depressing. And anybody that's on YouTube, even people that have millions of followers, will tell you, you have those days where you're like, damn, the whole world and the weight of the world is like on my shoulders, or just like nobody cares. You feel so
Right.
isolated. What really helps out is one, just immersing yourself in the work, like actually the process of making something. I found like, even in certain days where I've kind of like cut corners, like getting faster about doing certain things, like I kind of almost challenge myself. Like I goad myself. It's like, okay, can I get a whole video done with everything within one day? That's how it started for me. And it's be like, just immersing myself in that process, or just like focusing on that, will
Hmm.
keep me away from the bad emotions and the bad vibes that I'll get from nobody seeing my work, or from nobody subscribing to my channel, or when a publisher or a company doesn't want to work with me for whatever reason. There's, especially with that, there's been days where I've seen, different companies go and work with other creators that have done like not so great things on social media and stuff. And that affects you. I don't care who
Hmm.
you are, it definitely affects you. But you got to find little things here and there that'll kind of, take your mind away from it and keep focusing on the process and keep focusing on your little W's that you get here and there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome stuff, man. That's very inspiring words. So let's talk about some of your content. So
Mhm.
what exactly do you do? So I've watched some of your videos, and you have a lot of like retro stuff in there, which is awesome. What kind of content do you bring to the world?
Well, here's the cool thing for you, because eventually, hopefully, you get to binge some of my other content, because it's not just retro stuff. I
Mhm.
do a mixture of both modern and retro. It's
Okay.
just whatever's appropriate at the time. Like I get to the point where every single week I have a highly edited, highly produced video that's a review up on the channel for people to watch. Usually like Wednesday, Thursday. Sometimes again, with everything lately for me, it's changed because of one thing or another. We're getting into the holidays and stuff.
Mhm.
But on a normal month or normal couple months, it'd be every single week I have a brand new video review up for people to check out, whether it's modern games, a brand new game coming out or just came out, or something retro that I wanted to check out, or something that I wanted to talk about, or that I was interested in, or something else I got something to say about that other people probably have talked at some point, but have never really talked about it in the same way that I could. Where again, I mentioned before, Cisco and Ebert, those are my big inspirations, and a lot of inspirations for people that look at themselves as reviewers or critics, because those are the archetype, or like the apex archetype of what a critic is. They're
Mhm.
just there that they love the medium so much. They just love talking about it. And I'm the same way. Only in my case, it's with video games. I love discussing games with people. So I make content that tries to show that or reflect that, whether it's reviews, whether it's podcasts, whether it's unboxings, whether it's gameplay videos. I have a whole series called JJ's First 20 that sometimes I'll
Mhm.
get games early or right at the time of release that are brand new that sometimes people have never really seen. And I'll give like the first 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes with my first impressions of playing it. And sometimes maybe or maybe not, I'll review it or not down the line. Not always, but like I
Mhm.
at least offer it there. So you get all types of stuff, let's plays, you get all these like impressions, you get a lot of game talk on my channel, especially game talk from someone that knows about games and has played a lot of games. Unlike,
Nice.
some other places sometimes that like try to put themselves out there as like credible or not. And usually the audience can see that. The audience is not stupid. The
Mhm.
internet is not stupid. Contrary to popular belief out there, they could smell authenticity or inauthenticity like from a million miles away.
Right.
So I try to reflect that because I care about my credibility. I care about games, and I care about the talking and the discussion about them.
Man, that is awesome. So I speaking to you, I get a huge sense of passion for games, and the type of passion where like you said, like Robert and
Roger Ebert and Jim
Roger
Fiscal.
Ebert, yeah, and they bring to the table, and that's what people love. They love to see people passionate about the subject matter. You know what I mean? I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what so I see like you have behind you, you have like a couple Star Wars things. Are you like a Star Wars fan?
My whole family is Star. I come from a long line of Star Wars fans. My family, my
Three
parents
generations of
specifically,
Star
my
Wars.
mom and dad were there at 77 in New York seeing the first Star Wars movie, the premiere. Not the one at the
Wow.
Chinese amphitheater, not the one that everybody photographs, but in
Yeah.
New York during that same time they saw the opening of Star Wars. And we've been a Star Wars family ever since. Like, granted, I dive into other sci-fi, especially Star Trek, TNG specifically for me,
Oh,
but
really?
we're big Star Wars fans over here. I'm a big Luke Skywalker fan. I even just recently, I could even show you now.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, sure.
I got recently. I bought myself a Return of the Jedi lightsaber, a
Wow.
THQ
Oh,
lightsaber. I'm a
wow.
huge Star Wars, and I won't turn it on because I know it'll make a huge
Yeah.
sound that everybody will probably, with the mic and stuff. But like, I'm a
Yeah.
huge Star Wars fan. I even just reviewed recently a couple Star Wars games, and I'm reviewing another one that just came out or remaster, which is Knights of the Old Republic,
Yeah,
coming
I
out.
saw
That
that
was on
video.
Switch. Mhm.
What do you think about it?
I enjoy it because I never played the original game in full. Like, I've dabbled with it because I had
Okay.
friends that owned an original Xbox and other people that have had it on PC here and there, but I never sat down and really fully played it through like I've done other games, in the
Mhm.
past. This is the first time I'm actually doing that, and I think it's appropriate because I'll have a different mindset to look at the game, critically and as a reviewer.
Right.
But also, I have the benefit of playing quote unquote the best up to date version right now, as opposed to
Ah.
when the game was out on PC, it was broken until mods came out for whatever reason. But this one, Asper's got, their stuff together. So they put it out there, and I'm finally sitting down to play it.
Yeah. Oh man, I love KOTOR. It's one of the goats. It's one of my favorite
A lot of people
series.
say that.
One and two. Man, it's fantastic.
A lot of people say that.
What's the mini game that's in there? The
Oh,
dice game.
the Pazaak or Pacheck or something. I
Yeah.
can't pronounce it, but it's with a P, but it's the car game. It's that reminds me of Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII. That's it's the same type of idea.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And also like you know how The Witcher 3 has their like
Oh
a
yeah,
card
Gwent.
game. Yeah, it has Gwent. So
Mhm.
I loved KOTOR's like mini games. I love RPGs that have like their own thing going on, you know. That's why I want to get into Final Fantasy 10 because they have like that
Blitzball.
Blitzball.
Well,
Yeah, which
I did a review of Final Fantasy X HD Remastered, and I played that game more than most other people. And I can tell you right now, I hate Blitzball. Blitzball is
really?
such a pain in the butt. Yeah, I can't stand Blitzball because keep in mind, you have
Yeah.
to play through a lot of Blitzball to get the, was it legendary weapon for Waka? His legendary Blitzball, that's his weapon.
Uh-huh.
And you have to do a ridiculous amount of stuff. Like that game's end game content is ridiculous. It's a headache and a
Wow.
half. It's a
Man.
headache and a half.
Wow. Oh, so when it comes to like long games like that, like long RPGs or just long session type games, a lot of hours, especially like JRPGs and stuff. Um when it comes to like reviewing games like that, do you feel like it's difficult or is it like unachievable or is it just not realistic? Or do you feel like you have to cut corners? Like how do you feel as a content creator with large like games like that?
As far as like making content and like reviewing a game like that's long
Yeah,
like
and
that.
trying to avoid like feeling like not authentic if you didn't do 100 plus hours of
Well,
let's
here's
say
the thing about that. And this is a
uh
conversation that's happened many, many different times. And you've
mm,
seen it on from larger websites, smaller outlets, larger creators, smaller creators. Everybody has an opinion about this. The
mm,
problem is, though, everybody's opinion sometimes is just dead ass wrong. And to the
mm,
point where they're coming at it from a place trying to look good to the masses that are watching them, as opposed to looking at it for what it is.
right.
Bottom line is, and one of the ways that I learned how to review games, besides my own experience and stuff, was that
Mm,
I paid attention a lot to the IGN handbook. They actually have the most scrutinizing and the most definitive way on how to review games professionally, and they don't get credit for it. And the way I look at it is that if you have the ability to finish a game for a
mm,
review, you should finish it. It's the same way of watching a movie. You wouldn't review a movie if you didn't see it in full, if you didn't see what it had to offer in full.
right.
Same thing with a TV series. That there are exceptions to that, and everybody gets lost on the nuance of it because there are exceptions where a game is so broken that you can't finish it, or that a game is so hard that it's like detrimental to your experience. There's a
Mm,
game that's so bland and boring that it's detrimental to the experience. There's 100 different ways that things could go wrong, but generally, in my case, when I try to play a game for review, I try to at least finish it and see the full scope of what that game has to offer. So with a
right.
game like Final Fantasy X or a game like the Witcher 3, because I've done Witcher 3 as well. Here's another one that I'll even give you better, that I even gave a full 100 out of 100 in one of the websites that I worked for,
Mm.
Persona 5 Royal.
Oh wow.
These are
It's a long
long
game
games.
too.
These are some of these games, especially Persona 5, 100 plus hours, 120 plus hours like that. The problem is that people don't understand that either one, you have to make the time to play it, or
Mm,
two, when they have an opinion that says like, okay, they're being honest about not finishing the game, there could be a reason for that in their own experience. You can't just write off somebody's review or write off somebody's opinion because it simply doesn't agree with yours. You have to see what they're coming from or what they're presenting to you to judge
right.
whether it's credible or not, or whether it's legit or not. There's very few people sometimes that are out there that really could see the difference between the two. This is why whenever you hear about a Call of Duty game getting a review from IGN, usually everybody has the same reaction, but like hardly anybody's reading the review. Hardly anybody's actually seeing the game. Like it's a million and one different crazy things that are nuts
Wow.
with it.
That's so interesting. So I guess so when it comes to reviewing long games like that, you
Mhm.
prefer if the reviewer finished the game to not to say that to give it like an authentic review, but
To
like
be
you said,
thorough.
like trying to get like a full picture
Yeah,
of the
to be
game.
thorough. Like in
Right.
my personal, if I'm reading reviews, if I'm not making it, if I'm reading reviews, I at least want to know that whether it's a long game or a short game, you at least try to finish it. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you finished it, because I think that's fair, not only to the game, but also to the devs and also to the audience. because the audience, they're going to be spending $60+ sometimes on these games, no matter how much they spend, because they're hard-earned money. If you're going to
Hmm.
tell them that a game is one way and like you didn't see something crazy that happened towards the middle or the end, and they
Hmm.
run into that and they look at your review and like, yo, you told me this was a 9 out of 10. It feels like a lot worse. Again, subjective opinions aside, you
Hmm.
want to be able to at least, garner that trust from them by showing them how credible you could be. And it starts by doing something as simple as making the time to finish things.
Right, right. So I've noticed like I don't know about other outlets, but I've noticed sites like IGN will give like a review in progress type
Yeah.
of article where it's almost like a review. It could be like a long game or it's just something where they couldn't get the meat, like the full picture. They give you like a whether or not you should buy it or not, or they'll just give you a good chunk of what they think the game is about. And it's just maybe something they're not able to finish yet. So they'll have like an in progress. So it's like kind of like a semi review, like
Mhm.
waiting. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's like a little bit more honest, like a little bit more like
No, you want to know what that's for? That's for the business of running a website. That has nothing
mm,
to do with the review itself. And a lot of people don't understand that. The reason why these websites have to do something like that is because they rely on SEO. They rely on not only embargoes,
mhm,
because they're trying to get content out. And sometimes you either for one reason or another don't have enough time to finish a game and then go through the whole review process of writing, making video content, and all this other stuff by the time the embargo time comes up. The embargo time, for anybody that doesn't know, if you get a game early from a publisher, they give you a specific day and time where nobody could put up content prior to that. So you can't put reviews or anything else. You do that and agree to that in exchange for early access to stuff or access to other things like
right.
that way. And that's how a lot of websites, including IGN, including Polygon, Kotaku, they really survive because by that time, that everybody's going to be putting their content out. And you should know with a larger outlet, that's more than likely when they're going to have their content out. When it doesn't happen, or
Mhm,
there's whatever possibility that can't happen, they'll put a review in progress where they could actually put up their content, but be like, here's our thoughts right now. But then later, probably in the next day or two, or whatever, later in the week, you could expect a full review. So it gets them to come back. It's to
mhm,
get people to click on their stuff again, to recur that traffic, to get that
mm.
engagement and stuff. It's about the business of running a website, not about reviewing the game itself.
Awesome. So when it comes to when you okay, so let me try to rephrase this question
Yeah,
because I had it in my head and it's like starting to
all good.
so because I wanted to just ask you in your opinion.
Mhm,
um so when it comes to reviews and video games versus like movies, okay,
mhm,
so do you feel like because in a movie it's not like you have to speed through a movie, right? You never have to press forward or anything like that. You just press play, watch it, and it ends. It's short, 3 hours
mhm.
of your time throughout the day, whereas a
Right.
game could be long. You know how it is. It's different. It's a different medium. So do you feel like there's some unfair pressure for reviewers because of the culture of like how everyone wants reviews and then the pressure for the business, or what's your take on that?
Well, it's very complicated because,
Yeah.
again, everybody that has an opinion about this, that has talked about this, sometimes are just dead ass wrong in the way
Mhm.
that they're looking at it and the way that they present their thoughts. The thing is that you could look at both games and movies and the way that they're reviewed and the way they're looked at in very similar lights. The
Mhm.
problem is that the difference is time, because
Yes.
sometimes it takes a lot more time to finish a game most of the time, again, most instances, than it does for a movie. Because a movie, what, maybe about an hour, 45 minutes at the least, at the most, maybe about 3 hours, give or take. If we're talking
Mhm.
of strictly just films, series, obviously, TV series and stuff, it's a lot more time than that when it comes to telling stories. Usually a
Right.
movie in about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, you get your full story, which is whatever the plot is, show the characters, the visuals, all that stuff you could look at. You could look at it in the same way with the game. It's just a longer period of time. I think that if you make the time to actually go through stuff, then it's not as bad. Usually what happens is, and what you usually see on social media from multiple different places, even surprisingly from larger outlets, is people that either don't want to make the time, they're lazy, they complain
Mhm.
too much about certain stuff, and they're not focusing on the process of just getting things done. They care more about the impressions and more about being first and more about all these other things that are outside of actually reviewing the game than anything else. So that's where it gets all muddied up. The way I look at it also as a reviewer of games who takes a lot of inspiration from movie criticism, there's a lot of stuff that you could pull from reviewing a movie the same way you can review a game. Obviously, you're going to judge certain things differently, like gameplay. You're going to look at visual fidelity as far as like the graphics or the visual style. There are different aspects like that you can't really look at with a film. However, one thing that they both could be looked at in very similar lights as a critic, you could look at the package experience, the whole experience. Does a game, when you finish playing it or when you get to the point of completion, not necessarily like doing everything in the game, but when you finish it, you reach the end credits, whatever, how does that make you feel? You could ask that same type of question when you watch a movie. When you get to the end credits of a movie after watching it for 2.5 hours or 3 hours, how does it make you feel? That's how the two things are similar. And that's what a lot of people seem to get away from. And they get so caught up on all these other superficial things.
Interesting. Wow. I'm glad I was very curious of your take on it. It's very interesting point of view. So let me ask you, what is your like favorite part of content creation?
It's the talk about games. It's the discussion about it. Whether it's myself, talking to the audience and then seeing the comments afterwards, or being on a podcast and talking to another person, or the random conversations you have whenever you meet other people in other places that are also enthusiasts of games, or other people in the industry that I've had the pleasure of doing like every single month now, but it used to be every week. I talk to different game developers and different game PR and publishers, on the regular about games. And we just sit there, we talk about everything that's going on with them. That's the fun parts about all this with me.
Okay. And what about freelancing? What's your like favorite parts of that?
The creativity to be able to flex my thoughts a little bit. Obviously, the money for everybody as a freelancer, the money's always great. I mean, you're always freelancing in the hopes of trying to get a full-time job. Like there's no getting away around from that. Nobody wants to freelance forever. That's a lot of things that I feel a lot of content creators eventually at some point they're gonna have to ask themselves. And I don't think they're mature enough or ready enough to have that conversation at some point, because really when you think about it, content creation on YouTube as a, with AdSense and stuff, that's kind of another form of freelancing. You're just not employed by a larger company, but it's the creative freedom and the ability to breathe, when it comes to making stuff, as opposed to being so constricted or being limited by other aspects with other jobs that might be full-time, part-time. So there's an element of that that's very seductive and very appealing.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So when it comes to someone who, like, let's say a young kid comes up to you and says like, hey, Jakejames, I want to be a freelancer. What kind of advice would you give them? Or
like
content
Nike,
creators,
I
rather.
would say the same thing for both. I would say like make like Nike and just do it. Like actually just sit there and actually put a camera on yourself, start talking about games. If you want to be a content creator, if you want to write, sit there, write about something, make a blog, go ask, different websites if they take volunteer work or if they take freelance work and stuff. Because unfortunately, the crazy thing about starting off now these days is, number one, it's so saturated everywhere. It's apps. There's so many people trying to get in on this, especially those that are trying to make a quick buck. But also there's a lot of places that also take advantage of people that are trying to start up and trying to actually get in on this stuff, whether it's getting work and getting notoriety and getting like, exposure, which is the big thing that a lot of freelancers hate because it's so abused by a lot of different places. Exposure is good for a person who's never done this before and wants to learn the craft, or if they want to be a Jedi apprentice like that and learn the ways of the Force, that's one way to go about it. But when you've actually been doing this for a while, or if you're like me, you've been doing this now for over a decade, exposure doesn't cut it, but you still have to at least go out there and try to do the craft and try to engage with it, try to put stuff out there, not only to keep yourself sharp, but also to go and get the bigger opportunities eventually.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Great words for the kids, the up and coming people out there that want to do what you do,
Definitely.
And there's a lot of people out there, right, like that, right?
Probably.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say probably.
Yeah. So let's thank you so much for talking a little bit about what you do for a living. That's awesome. How long you been doing it now?
I'm going on
I think you
12
might have
years.
said it.
In January, it'd be 12 years for me in January.
Wow.
That I've been doing this for over a decade. So again, I started off 2009, 2010. So yeah, about almost close to about 12 years. So it's been a while.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
And I wish you well, and I hope I hope things are on the rise and you're doing well.
That would be nice. That'd be cool. I mean, again, just a lot of people say the grind never stops, but it's really just the passion never stops. You just got to keep working and doing more stuff. Like recently, for me, besides making videos, I was actually able to film a TV spot for international audiences. Eventually, at some point, that's going to hopefully debut on a Hong Kong TV station. Talking about tech, of all things, which is
Wow.
cool. So, it's little things like the little W's like that. Hopefully lead to the bigger
That's
better
right.
stuff.
That's right. Good for you. Good for you. So let's transition to the second part of the podcast, which is games. I guess because we could do like a little history of Jake James, a little
Sure.
timeline from baby Jake James to now.
Sure.
So let's start with what was the first system? The Genesis, if I'm
The
correct?
first game and the first system I've ever played, period, in my life was the Sega Genesis, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog. That was the first console I ever owned. Was in my household that had it. They had it before
Mhm.
I was, or right after I was born. So I wasn't able to play it yet. But eventually, when I got of age, the first game I played was Sonic the Hedgehog on Genesis. Because funny enough, me and the
Mhm.
Genesis, or the quote unquote the Mega Drive, are born in the same year. We're kind of intertwined like this. The Mega Drive came out in Japan in '88, and I was born in
88.
'88. It came here to the United States as the Genesis in '89, and that was the year that my family got it. They actually got the original bundle with Altered Beast, and that's
Oh
how I really had
yes,
it.
that's
Before
right.
Sonic, because Sonic was 92 or was 91 or 92, I believe it is, but
Mm.
93, 94 is when I first played Sonic the Hedgehog.
Wow, that's awesome. I love the Genesis. I was a Genesis guy myself.
Yep.
My cousins, they were the Nintendo ones. My grandmother had the NES in the house, and then my first like Christmas gift console was the Genesis. You flip it over, it had like all the games. Remember that? And in the
You know
box.
what's
And
cool about that?
yeah,
Because again, I can relate, and a lot of us from our generation that are grew up as either Genesis kids or NES kids or Super Nintendo kids, was that we had friends in school that where we would always go to each other's houses and play
yes,
the other systems or borrow games, obviously, because we didn't have money like that. A lot of
yeah.
us, we came from households that would probably buy us one thing or very few things
Hmm.
every once in a while. But we would have friends that we would kind of mingle with, and we would experience those other stuff. I had a friend that had a Super Nintendo. That's how I played all the classics. I played Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, Final Fantasy, like a lot of different things on there. That's how I got my first exposure to it beyond just that one ecosystem.
And so you got a little taste of the Genesis, and then you were hooked
I,
with gaming.
it was really playing Sonic the first time and hearing Green Hill Zone and seeing those visuals. That's what got me hooked. That's because
Wow.
if you hear Green Hill Zone, it's an iconic piece
Yeah,
of
for
music,
sure.
iconic video game track. There's a reason for it, so it's
Mm.
that memorable. And from there, it was history.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. So, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I'm the middle child, so I have two,
Okay, yes, you have like an older brother
an older brother and a younger brother.
okay, boys in the house. Okay.
Mhm.
And they're all gamers. They all love games.
Yeah, they're all gamers. They're all different flavors of gamers too. Like I play just about everything because I have to. My
Mhm.
younger brother, he's a little bit more of an Xbox guy now, at least in the modern day. He loves playing on Xbox Live or using Game Pass and stuff. And he's also getting into PC gaming recently.
Okay.
My older brother is a little bit more retro when it comes to other stuff because again, he grew up through that era or that time where he was a little bit older than me, about 10 or so years, and he was able to play it as an older kid or as an older child
Yeah.
and I look at it a little bit differently.
Okay, okay. So, growing up, like, what kind of games were you playing together? Fighting games, wrestling?
Oh man, a lot. And especially funny enough, you mentioned wrestling because I come from a wrestling household from that late 80s
Oh,
to
really?
through the 90s into the 2000s wrestling fan, a WWF family specifically, not
Ah,
WWE for all the people that like
who's your main back in the, like, now they say
okay,
like main for fighting games?
okay, it
Like,
depends on
who's
the
your
era.
main?
It depends on the era we're talking about. Like if we're talking 90s, I was an Undertaker fan, hands down. Like the
Undertaker.
whole
Okay.
family was Undertaker fans.
I mean,
And
Undertaker's been doing it for like 50 years. It could be
these
every
that's
generation, you could say
like
Undertaker.
my family followed that man's career since the beginning, like literally, like it's insane, like how much of fans we are of that guy. Oh, now leading into his retirement not so long ago, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
my family, even in the 80s, they were big wrestling fans, with Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik and stuff. But I played a lot of wrestling games in the 90s, on my Genesis, on Super Nintendo, in the arcades. I even reviewed a couple of them on my channel. I reviewed WWF Royal Rumble on the
Oh,
Genesis,
I
uh,
loved Royal Rumble.
WWF Wrestlemania the arcade game. I reviewed that
Mhm.
too. there was at one point I was going to do, and I just didn't have the time. I was going to do No Mercy in WrestleMania 2000. Like,
Ooh.
there's a lot that I've played because, again, as a wrestling fan, I even played WCW games, WCW, NWO Revenge, and World Tour, for a lot of people on the N64,
Yeah.
but I played a lot, a lot of those wrestling games you would think of that are iconic: Super WrestleMania, WrestleFest, was it the WCW game that was on the Super Nintendo? I forgot the name of it at the moment, but like a
Mhm.
lot of different ones here and there that I've played, but as far as general games was concerned, besides the wrestling stuff, which was a family thing amongst me and my siblings, I played a lot of things. Obviously, Sonic, Altered Beast, because it was the pack-in. That was one of those first like few games I got into.
Mhm.
Ghouls and Ghost on the Genesis specifically. I was even talking about that game today because of the box art. It has one of the best box arts along with Altered Beast that I've ever seen. It's one of my top favorites as far as like game art or game box art.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
even with other games that later on, like I'm looking at it now on the side, with some of my collection stuff like NBA Jam, Jurassic Park that I
Mm.
just reviewed,
Oh,
or
I
from Jam.
love Jurassic Park. The
Yeah, I reviewed
intro
it.
where
Yeah.
like the T-Rex,
Mhm.
comes out through the light,
Yep.
and then the Jeep is there. Oh man.
Yep. I reviewed that recently on my channel talking about it, and people were saying the same thing, like the nostalgia of just like, some of those funny memories. The music is what gets to me because I'm a really big fan of music and games. So
Mhm.
usually the soundtracks is what I remember the most. And specifically with Jurassic Park, like there's just some tracks in there that are just dope. Like they just
Yeah.
sounded like they're uniquely Genesis. Like they have that sound. That's like,
Yeah.
yes, this is what a Genesis game sounds like. And it just feels good to like,
Yeah,
hear
for
that.
real. Yeah, no,
I mean,
seriously. What about talk about music? Talking about music. Streets of Rage. Streets
yes,
of Rage
Streets of Rage,
2.
another one. I reviewed Streets of Rage. I did it with a friend of mine. It was a kid show
That
kid
that
watching.
that for me is the GOAT in terms of Sega's music, man. That
Iconic music, man. That first stage, the
yeah.
first stage, iconic.
Loved it. Just picking up the turkeys and just beating up guys.
That was also an age of like turkeys. Is that or chickens? Like there was a thing with games. Like, listen, everybody was eating chicken to gain health. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
I feel like a lot of us growing up, we all love chicken, probably for that reason, because we were so exposed to it.
yeah, right, for sure. It's chicken to get your gains.
Right.
Oh man, so yeah, so you played that and then growing up you were playing like were you get like playing all the systems, or
In
what was
one way
going
or
on in the
another.
household? Was there every single system there?
No, in my household, like I mentioned before, again, in our generation, you grew up probably mostly with one console. If you got one, if you were lucky enough to be in a family that had one, that was able to go buy one, maybe if you were really lucky, you probably had both. But it was very rare amongst me and my friends back then in that era,
Hmm.
because when that being the case, we would go to each other's houses and play the different consoles. Like
Right.
the first time I played the Super Nintendo, I went to a friend's house. The first time I played the PlayStation, I was at a friend's house on a play date, just chilling, and just that's how I played Crash Bandicoot 2, one of my favorite PlayStation games ever. Games like that, or playing Spyro, or playing Tekken 2 and
Mhm.
Tekken 3.
Yeah.
I here's a funny thing, and I
Used to
tell people
love to.
about this, and it's such a real thing. I associate the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, with the smell of pizza, because I used to go to a
Really?
friend's play. I used to go to a friend's house because I lived in New York. Okay, I'm unapologetically New Yorker, even though I live in a
All
different
right,
place.
New York, stand up.
I grew up for 20 something plus years in New York. So I could say this, right?
Yeah.
We have a very like we're connoisseurs of pizza. I
Of
think
course.
it's we're New York certified when it comes to pizza. And my friend lived on top of a brick oven pizzeria in his old place.
Oh
And I used
wow.
to go to his house, and not only we would play PlayStation games, but his dad would get like pies from the pizzeria downstairs. So we get like full pies of straight cheese, full pies of pepperoni, brick oven New York style pizza. It's the goat of pizzas. It's the goat of like plates. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
every time we would do that, we'd be playing Tekken 2, Tekken 3, probably play some Crash Bandicoot Warped. I associated that with the PlayStation. And every time even thinking about it, I just like feel like I could smell pizza in the room, because it's just like one of those things that it's like it just is imprinted to you, and it's an
Yeah.
awesome memory.
Yeah, I love it. I love that's what's so magical about video games. You
Mhm.
could just listen to something, see something, and it just brings you back to your childhood, brings you back to something magical in your life.
Mhm.
That's why I love games so much, man.
You know what's cool too? Even the holidays, because now we're getting ready to see the experience of the holidays. Gaming in the holidays back then was freaking dope. It was amazing.
Yeah.
My one console, the first console I ever got during the holidays was a Nintendo 64. And that was the first time, that was the first real console I got that was a Nintendo console outside of what I knew with Genesis. Because again, I never got a Super Nintendo in my household. I had
Right.
skipped like a generation or so before we got a new console, obviously making money and, surviving out there in New York.
Mhm.
The thing that I remember with it is that I had the gold controller bundle for the N64. And my first game that I ever played on the N64 was a Star Wars game. It was Shadows of the Empire on Nintendo 64.
Oh,
And
wow.
my second was Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Two fantastic games to start off with that system that wasn't Mario 64 or Legend of Zelda eventually.
Right, right. Oh, yep, yep. Wow. Did you play uh Star Wars episode 1 Racer?
Yes,
The
but I
pod
never
racer?
played it on release. I played it eventually with a friend. Like the Star Wars games that I played on N64 was Shadows of the Empire and Rogue Squadron, the goats
Oh,
of that system.
yeah.
Like they were amazing. They were so much fun to play that back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what would you say is your do you remember what was your first console that like you purchased?
That I bought like
Like with
myself.
your own
Yes.
money and
With my own money, the first console that I purchased was an Xbox 360. Straight up.
wow.
And here's the thing, because I got consoles prior to that as gifts, during the holidays. I got my N64 as a gift.
Hmm.
Okay. I also inherited both the Genesis and also I inherited the Atari 2600. And I had like a full library of games with Atari 2600. So
Nice.
it wasn't my generation with that games, but I was exposed to it because of my
Mhm.
older brother. He had like a ridiculous amount of Atari 2600 games. It was insane. But also, the PlayStation 2 that I got eventually was also a gift during the holidays. I didn't buy that with my own money. It wasn't until when I started going into college, or at least I want to say end of high school into college. Again, I'm trying to remember the year that 360 came out. I think I was already in college where I bought that, and I also bought Gears of War with it, specifically Gears, because the console I wanted to play that on the console because I saw that I was in love with it and I wanted to play it
Yeah.
and I wanted to play it online with Xbox Live and all that jazz. And
Hmm.
eventually also I got that. And then shortly afterwards, we got Halo 3. And I ended up going to White Plains and going to the release for it to get the collector's edition with the helmet that I bought with my
Nice.
own money.
Really? You didn't have to camp out for that, right? That was like a
At the time, no, I had to wait in line, but I
Mhm.
didn't camp out. Like the thing is, like we had even back then, there were still times where like there was crowds where you had to be there for hours. But when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got Halo 3, it really wasn't like that because I think at the time, if I remember correctly, they were only allowing people online that had confirmed reservations for it,
Mhm.
for whatever version of the game that they get. And I had the collector's edition, which is the best one you could get at
Right.
the time there. So I was obviously going to be online. So I remember getting it, and I don't think it was that long. It
Mhm.
really like I waited in a line and it really wasn't that bad.
Wow, man. So so did you get any of the other like Nintendo systems like the Wii, Wii U,
I
any
did
of
get
those?
Wii U. I did get Wii U. I didn't get the Wii because
Mm.
the Wii, a friend of mine had it because I think when the Wii was out, I ended up getting a PlayStation 3 at one point, like that after my 360. Because everybody remembers the Red Ring of Death. Like the 360 was like
Yeah, yeah, I had
almost
that experience.
mine broke down like a bunch of times, and like I was like,
Mm.
I'm not paying for another console for like a third or fourth time. Like I'm just gonna go get a PlayStation and have this work in perpetuity. Like it
Right.
was just I wanted it to work, but I ended up getting that over the Wii, and then afterwards I got a Wii U, and eventually I got rid of the Wii U because we all know how that console turned out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've never played the Wii U. The Wii I did. The Wii I did, and then the Switch. So,
I played a lot of the games on Wii that I wanted to play on my Wii U
oh,
eventually.
nice,
I
nice.
wanted to play Tatsunoko versus Capcom, obviously.
Mhm.
I wanted to play Super Mario Galaxy. I wanted to play Smash Brothers, specifically Brawl, because
Mhm.
that was the game that people wanted on the Wii. Besides, I also Skyward Sword and things like that. So I did eventually, and at one point or another, I did play games like that. One of the things I also did that a lot of people do not do, and they really should at some point if they
Mhm.
can. I used to get games from the local public library, and I used to rent out games like that, and that would save me a ridiculous amount of
Yes.
money playing different games.
Yep. Shout out to the libraries. The library by me gets all like the brand new games
Yep.
yeah, and I sign up through the online,
You save
check to see
hundreds of dollars
every
on
once in a
stuff.
while, let's say a game comes out Friday, I'll check couple days later, see if it's there. If not,
I'll tell you right now, I'll
keep
tell you a
checking.
bunch of people, especially recently, that were curious about Grand Theft Auto Trilogy were probably wishing they got it from the library instead of spending $60 on it. It's instances
Definitely.
like that that I've avoided or I've used to my advantage to be able to play a lot more games while
Mhm.
also not breaking the bank.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Definitely, that is definitely a nice hidden gem of advice there. Because I do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, awesome, man, awesome. So, what are you playing currently?
Oh man, a
Yeah.
lot. Like right now, I'm obviously playing Knights of the Old Republic because that just came out, and I've wanted to do a review on that for a while.
Mhm.
So I just got
I'm
that
sorry.
recently.
So, did that come with both in the
No,
pack?
it's just the first one that's remastered and ported over to the Switch. Eventually, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure, I think it's a given at this point. They're going to do Knights of the Old Republic 2 at some
Okay.
point. It'd be crazy not to. But keep in mind, we have the first game that's getting remade remade for Knights of the Republic remake. So it makes sense to get the first game out there for everybody to play.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty sure the second one will come out. But
Okay.
besides that, I've done stuff. I did a lot of these games I reviewed. So Metroid Dread was another one. I
I'm
just
playing
did.
that right now. It's
Yep,
good.
I just finished that recently and did a review on it. I did Alien 3 on the Genesis not so long ago. I did a
Wow.
I did was it Star Wars Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith, the game. I did also trying to think off the top of my head because there's a lot. There's a lot. Obviously, I'm playing games like Call of Duty Warzone, with friends and stuff, Overwatch with friends and stuff when I can. Guilty Gear Strive, I've done that as well. Days Gone is another one that I kind of like finished playing recently. Smash Brothers, obviously, because of Sora coming out for Smash Brothers. That's a whole nother thing with that. As far as like other reviews that I've done, Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like the last couple of weeks is just so much. Like it's like, Shadows of the Empire. I did a review of Shadows of the Empire as well, for Star Wars. And also, I believe also, which one also did I do? Like, Bioshock 2. Bioshock 2 was the other recent one that I did not so long ago because I'd
Oh,
done
nice.
Bioshock 1 before last year for Halloween, and I did Bioshock 2 again this year right after Halloween.
Awesome. Is this your first time playing it, or?
No, I played them before, of course. Like again, those games are must plays for FPS like lovers, but I
Mhm.
never really sat down, played it in full for a review, looking at it through
Ah,
a
okay.
different lens. So I played all the Bioshock games. I played them on PlayStation 3 back in the day, but now I'm able to play them and go through them again, see
So
what's up.
so let's take an example. So when you're playing Bioshock 2 for in those type of review lens,
Mhm.
what how are you playing the game? Like, is there a structure? Like, how are you reviewing games?
The way I approach it is that there's not really many like restrictions that I put on myself when it comes to playing a game for review. Like the only restriction that I put myself on is that I play the game on normal difficulty. That is the
Okay.
one thing that a lot of people disagree with me on, and I understand their reasoning, but they're wrong. I could tell you as someone that reviews a lot of games, when you're playing a game for review, the best way to play it is on normal because you get a sense or a better sense of the actual vision and the intention of the game developers and the
Mhm.
designers of what that game is supposed to feel like. And when you play it, especially in terms of difficulty, you see a lot of people when it comes to playing games, they play it on easy. And I understand that because you have to get through it because of time. But the one problem with that is that you're affecting the difficulty of the game. You're already changing what the initial vision and the intention of what that
Right.
game was, that experience. So that's the only thing when it comes to most games that I play. I'll put it on normal and then I'll just play like through like normal. I'll try to pace myself over the days and see how I would go about it. And then eventually by the time I finish, then I have a good idea of like where I stand on it.
That's awesome. So, but before we go, let me ask you a question. So, what advice would you give, or what is your opinion on, like, let's say I'm a reviewer, and I have the next JRPG to review, and I get a review code, and like everyone's throwing out reviews when it comes out and stuff.
Respect the embargo. That's the first thing you got to do.
Of course,
Respect the
respect the
embargo
embargo.
because a lot of
But
people don't do that.
in terms of feeling the pressure of like having to finish a game before reviewing it, would you rather a reviewer finish the game and have the review a month later after the game is out, or would you rather them give you something when the game is first coming out and everyone wants to see something, or would you rather them put up something like impressions or early review or like something like that and try to wiggle around it, or do you suggest they rush through the game, hit nothing, none of the side plots, just or the side stories, just go straight through the main story, and rush to the end as fast as they can to review it? Like
Well,
all those different options. What do you suggest?
it really depends. And a lot of those options all sound like disasters for one reason or
Mm,
another, depending on where you're coming from. If you're at a major outlet, okay, if you're at like an IGN or Kotaku, a Polygon, a Rock Paper Shotgun, a G4, whatever, you should be playing that game by the time and finishing it by the time, that embargo comes up or the deadline comes up. Obviously, where this gets all muddied up and where there's a lot of nuance is when you actually get the game. Because I was doing guides and review stuff for IGN at one point, and sometimes I would get it on the day of or the day after release, which is not your fault and it's not the outlet's fault. That's the publisher's fault. They do that intentionally. They do that on purpose. That's not an accident. For
yeah,
one reason or another. Again, it's different cases.
like
One example
like
I could give.
Cyberpunk, right?
Well, it's like Cyberpunk, but also I'll give even a better example.
Mm.
Shenmue 3. That happened to me with Shenmue 3, where they gave us the game literally like either the day before or the day of release in order to
Wow.
review that game. You can't play a game like Shenmue 3 in like a day. That's just not going to happen. Like it's just impossible. But I would rather have it that regardless of the situation, number one, you try to finish the game. Okay. Number two, don't get caught up on what everybody else is doing. Okay. There are other people that could, are concerned when it comes to SEO, when it comes to relevancy and timing and deadlines and stuff. That's not your job as the reviewer. Your job as the reviewer is to get stuff done by when your editor says it needs to be done. Or if you're on your own, try to get it as close as you can by the time it's relevant like that. But you should focus on getting it done right rather than getting it done first or getting it done quickly more than anything else. Because if you don't get it done right, then you're going to feel the after effects of that later on, especially when the audience sees that and they're not going to trust you again. It's better to at least complete the game and be thorough enough to know what you're talking about, as opposed to rushing things out and not knowing what you're talking about. There's way too many instances, especially at major outlets, where they'll get reviews out there, they'll have opinions and all this other stuff, and they'll be dead wrong about certain aspects of it. And everybody could see that.
Yeah, and that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for your your expertise and just sharing your knowledge with me and the world. Thank you so much. So we'll end the podcast soon. So right now it's your time for your spotlight. Just let them know, you could plug in where people could find you, your content and stuff like that. The floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So if you guys want to support me and if you like, the type of stuff that we were talking about, check out my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/gamerswithgains channel, or you could search Jakejames Lugo in the search bar. You can find me there. So subscribe to the channel if you can, show some love. I'm trying to grow the channel significantly. And my goal was to get past 10K at some point. And it's been an uphill battle, for one reason or another. But yeah, check out the channel, subscribe to it. New videos every single week, new reviews, highly edited, highly produced video reviews on games, let's plays, unboxings, podcasts, all types of stuff. Follow me on Twitter. Every single day I'm posting stuff up on Twitter at Jakejames Lugo on Twitter. Show some love. Come say hi. Come talk to me. I'm always interacting. I'm always up to talking with people about games on Twitter. Same thing with Instagram. It's at Jakejames Lugo on Instagram. It's the same exact thing. I'm posting every single day stuff about games, pictures, new games. I even just got a Pac-Man book. I don't know if you could see it in the corner. The Pac-Man book.
I think I saw that online,
right
like
over there.
social media.
Yeah, like the birth of an icon, which is the history of Pac-Man. I did a whole unboxing of that today, even before we recorded this podcast. That's up there now. You could go look at on the YouTube channel, and also Patreon. Definitely check out the Patreon, subscribe to it or join up with it. It's $1 and you get a ton of exclusive content from me and early access to all the videos I put up on my YouTube channel. So all the reviews that I make, you get it like a couple days to a week early sometimes, on top of getting exclusive podcasts on subjects you're not going to see on YouTube, which is game talk and other great stuff that I know a lot of people will love. But give me a chance, check it out, and show some love, man.
That's great, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I'll be sure to drop all the info down below and stuff like that. Thank you so much, Jakejames, for everything and sharing your knowledge.
No problems, man. Anytime. I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely, man. It was great. And with that said, hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay true to yourself and embrace your inner game. Peace.